ramifications are. Our immigration laws, our border security have been a complete and total disaster for decades, and there's no way the Democrats will allow it to be fixed without a government shutdown. He goes on to say in a second tweet, border security is national security, and national security is the long-term viability of our country. A government shutdown is a very small price to pay for a safe and prosperous America. Mary Alice, we're watching this. He's coming into the midterms. He's hitting the campaign trail tonight. Does he really want to shut down?
He might, but he's all alone. We're having a hard time finding one Republican that supports him on this idea, especially in the lead up to the midterms. Republicans have struggled over the last 18 months to show that they can get things done in Washington, that they can govern. They control every branch here, and yet they've passed only a few bills, a few big pieces of legislation, not nearly everything they wanted to get done. And so if they shut down the government just weeks before the midterms, it could really backfire. And that's why we're seeing so many Republicans pushing back against this idea.
And Serena, I mean, immigration now is what he's going to latch this on. No Republican or Democrat's really going to hold us up for the wall.
Well, it's not just the wall that he wants, though, John. He wants to get rid of the lottery system. He wants to change rules to chain migration. He wants comprehensive immigration reform. And the last time the Senate took that up, it was months of negotiations. It was a bipartisan gang of 8. They passed it with more than 60, I believe it was 68 to 32 votes, and it went nowhere in the House. And it took them forever to come to any kind of an agreement, let alone on a ticking clock that they're up against now with the government shutdown. And I think that's one thing we all have to wonder is when this shutdown would occur. Would it be before the midterms and jeopardize them? Would it be after? Taking over-unders on that, maybe? I don't know.
What are you hearing from sources up on Capitol Hill?
That he just doesn't have the votes for such a conservative immigration package. We know what he wants, and there are some Republicans that agree with him on some of those measures, the end of the lottery system, building a wall, but not enough. They took these votes before, and they didn't pass.
Well, and we know the president right now is heading down to Florida. You could see him right there. He's walking at Andrews Air Force Base, heading down to their campaign for Ron DeSantis tonight. We're going to talk about that more in a minute, but you see him boarding Air Force One. Serena, you wanted to get back in on this.
I was going to say that if the president did shut down the government over this, it would be the third time this year that, as Mary Alice said, they control the House, the Senate, and the Republican presidency, that a shutdown occurred on their watch.
We need to keep an eye on it.
The first time in January was over the Dreamers issue, and they couldn't get movement on just a single part of immigration, let alone something as large as scope as this.
And we know that the president is hell-bent on this wall. I mean, he says it every single day, every rally. We're probably going to hear it again tonight in Florida when he goes down there. It's a hot issue for him.
Hot issue.
Sure, but when it can bring out his base supporters,
absolutely,
it can also bring out Democrat base supporters, and especially if he starts gearing up towards a shutdown, that could rally the other side.
It's going to be fun to watch the next 98 days, something like that.
I think even sooner.
I don't know.
97, tick, tick, tick.
Oh, gee, you're watching that one. But there's something else we're watching today, and that is the first trial of special counsel Robert Mueller. Paul Manafort, the one-time campaign chairman for Donald Trump, he is on trial in the Eastern District of Virginia. My colleague Catherine Falders has been watching this with our team most of the day. And Catherine, you know, we know now the jury is seated. They are ready to go. Opening statements are actually going to get started today.
They're actually going to get started today. That's right. The jury seated 6 men, 6 women, predominantly white. The judge whittled this down from a group of 65 people, John. This judge, T.S. Ellis, is known as the, quote, rocket docket for his speed, and he sure lived up to that nickname today. The jury is seated. We're going to hear opening statements. In fact, I just want to tell you how we get the information out of this court that you can see behind me. No cell phones, just pen and pad. 2 of our producers, Lauren Pearl and Trish Turner, are inside. And then one of our PAs, Allie Pecorin, she runs into that courtroom all the way up to the 9th floor and then comes out here with the notes. So that's how we're getting the information here. And she's just run out again with another pile of notes that I think is just from the opening statements. But the jury's seated, and we're well underway here, John.
You know, listen, it's the great ABC free gym membership, as we like to call it.
Is she running 9
She is running, yeah. Allie's wearing, she said to us this morning, I'm going to get my sneakers, I'm ready to go. But, Catherine, the other thing we know about this trial...
She has her sneakers on, she has her leggings on, she's all decked out.
I think she has rain boots, too, for the weather. You know, Catherine, before we let you go on this topic, you know, the other thing that we've been tracking is that sources have told ABC News that there's one word we're not going to hear in this case. It's a word that starts with the letter T.
It's a word that starts with the letter T, and that word is Trump. Witnesses are instructed from our sources not to say the word Trump, and they're also not supposed to mention Russia or collusion. Now, of course, this is a separate trial from the D.C. one. This one is where Manafort is accused of financial crimes. That includes tax evasion and bank fraud, John. But I just want to give you a little bit of the color from inside this courtroom during that jury selection. You know, Kevin Downing, Paul Manafort's lead attorney, joked during that jury selection and said, "Will you yell bingo at the next round? We feel like we're playing bingo." And this judge that I was telling you about, who has a sense of humor, looked back and he says, "I'm looking forward to yelling recess." But look, you can imagine Trump is not supposed to be brought up Russia or collusion, but I still would predict that President Trump could react to this one. He said that this is an unfair trial. He seeks to distance himself from Paul Manafort, but has stood by him in a lot of those tweets and those public statements that we've seen.
Yeah, sometimes calling him a good guy, saying he's been treated like Al Capone and others.
Right.
Catherine, I know you're watching that with us. Stick with us. Going to bring you back a little later for another topic, but I do want to move on because the other thing that we're watching today is Facebook back in the news. They've taken down 32 pages, profiles, potentially from foreign adversaries. And really, Mary Alice, this is coming right into election season where the president has called this all fake. There was nobody going after our elections. As we know, in 2016, we had multiple, just about all government agencies, intelligence agencies saying that Russia did, in fact, influence and meddle in our elections. And clearly, them and others try and do it again.
Right. And his own director of national intelligence, Dan Coates, said earlier this month that the warning lights were blinking red as we approach this midterms, that it's happening again. And Facebook is essentially saying today, yes, it is. And we're trying to do something about it. But one of the big questions out of today is, what is the federal government doing about it? What is their coordinated plan? Are they going to work with Facebook? Are they working across agencies? We've yet to see one cohesive effort to stop this.
And I'm curious, just to stick with you for a second here, because I know you were out recently covering some of the primaries we're watching in Washington recently, Washington State, not D.C. But what were you hearing from people? Any conversations or topics about people that recognize that this is a real thing?
People are totally freaked out. I don't think it's necessarily driving people to the polls. Those issues are still things like healthcare and jobs, public education. But it's a constant conversation. What did you see on Facebook today? We saw an ad about this. Is this a real ad? Is this campaign true? There's a concern, a heightened alert among people and voters about what they're seeing and if they should trust it.
Well, and that's just it, Serena, because it's not like they're just saying bad things about the candidates. No. They're going into social issues here. We know Black Lives Matter has been a big issue for them. It's really a very wide swath.
It's a wide swath, and they're spending money on these platforms in order to advertise. So then it becomes a question of, who is this advertisement actually coming from? Is it coming from the campaign? Right. Is it coming from a candidate? Or is it coming from one of these Russian trolls? According to Facebook, they found that these 32 accounts that they removed ran about 150 ads totaling $11,000. And the first ad was just created in April 2017, the last in June 2018. So while Facebook isn't saying, yes, this is all politically motivated, they're saying there's political undertones to all of these accounts, and no questions asked.
And financial undertones, too. We know that their stock has taken several hits. What was it, like last week, Zuckerberg had lost billions of dollars when news was coming out. We're going to be watching this, especially with our 97 days to go. Switching gears, though, there's another little staffing development over at the White House. So usually it's how long you're staying, a couple months, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. Apparently, John Kelly said he's staying till 2020. He said this in a senior staff meeting yesterday. It was in a room with many other individuals that were allegedly on a growing short list to take his job. But Kelly told people in the room that he is staying. He's not going anywhere. I want to bring in ABC's Jordan Phelps over at the White House. She's been tracking this story with us today. And Jordan, pretty shocking, because we had been reporting for several months there was a growing list, anyone from Nick Ayers over at the Vice President's office or Mick Mulvaney to take the job.
Yeah, and what's significant about this, John, is it comes just the day after Kelly hit that 1 year mark on the job as White House Chief of Staff. Part of what might be going on here is we know the president loves to call out the fake news, and there has been so much speculation as Kelly approached that year mark of what is he going to do. We know that Kelly, there have been conversations internally about him eyeing his future, his next step. we knew that there was this list of potential candidates to replace Kelly. And while all of that is not necessarily wrong, in fact, that reporting still holds, it's that Kelly and the president apparently came to this decision yesterday that he is going to stay on the job. And Kelly told those senior staff, as you mentioned, that he's been asked to stay through 2020. And in fact, another senior official told me in a separate meeting, Kelly said he intends to stay through 2024. That would, of course, be through the end of a second term should the president be elected, should he win his reelection. But, you know, John, I'll start taking bets now. We'll see if Kelly lasts through 2020, let alone 2024. This is a grueling job. It's not uncommon for chief of staff to move on after, you know, a relatively short amount of time. But, you know, for now, he's sticking around, or at least that's what they want us to think.
I would say I'd bet against you, but I really don't want to lose $20 today. Let's bring in Catherine Falders, though, because she has done a lot of reporting on this as well. She and our colleague Devin Dwyer just did a big piece around Kelly's 1 year. And Catherine, you've been talking to sources today as well. What does this feel like from what people are saying? To me, it's almost like, you know, kind of sealing up the valve here that, you know what, we're going to be here, don't worry, especially as the president is getting a little antsy as we get towards the midterms.
He's definitely getting antsy, and I think you're inside the White House, and you'd probably agree with this. You're dealing with two camps here. Half of the folks we spoke to for our story said that Kelly's departure was imminent. We know that he's been fed up, that he's been increasingly sidelined in meetings. You know, the addition of Bill Shine, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Communications. Kelly wasn't involved in that hire. And then other folks that I've talked to who are close to Kelly say, actually, he could be sticking this out until the fall. So in line with staying through the midterms. But it's no question that he has been increasingly sidelined in the White House, reporting that he's coming to work later. But John, you'll remember that 2 months after the president announced via tweet that he was appointing John Kelly, by the way, an announcement that came unexpected to his chief of staff, to Kelly, who hadn't even accepted the job yet. He was currently at Homeland Security. But you remember 2 months after that announcement, President Trump told reporters on the North Lawn Kelly could be here all 7 years. And a source close to the White House said Kelly, quote, he has adopted the Rex Tillerson mantra. If you want to get rid of me, fire me. So I think that's where we are.
He's staying put for now, for sure. You want to jump in on this, Mary Alice?
It's staying put, but I wonder if the job has changed or will change. Because if your title is Chief of Staff and there are major staff hires happening that you weren't aware of, that's a red flag.
The job has certainly been redefined from sources we've been talking to. And what's interesting is that Kelly, who seemed to want all-encompassing control, is sort of surrendering to the Trump style of doing business. It's really interesting. We know that Donald Trump said right after he got elected, maybe I don't need a chief of staff. But for the moment, he's got one that's going to stay till 2020. Catherine, thank you for your insight on that. Appreciate it. We'll let you get back to Manafort duty. A lot going on there. There is other news tonight, and it's another rally the president's heading down to. We saw him earlier departing on Air Force One. He's going to be going down there to campaign, Mary Alice, for Ron DeSantis, who's clearly a very loyal Trump supporter. Really loyal. One of the most visible Donald Trump supporters out there on Fox News all the time. If you haven't seen him, then you've never watched Fox News. And sort of the word on the street, the rumor is that that's why he earned the president's endorsement. The president liked that he was out there advocating for him, vocal for him. He wasn't seen as the front runner in the race before the president's endorsement. And so when the president weighed in, it kind of ruffled some feathers from traditional Republicans in the state that kind of liked the other guy. It'll be really interesting to see how close the primary ends up. The primary is at the end of the month, and the president has promised to campaign more and more as we get closer to the midterms. And there's this ad everybody's talking about. Oh, well, the ad, we should take a look at it, John, because it is him, Ron DeSantis, really saying that he is all in to the extreme with his family for the president. Let's take a look.
Everyone knows my husband, Ron DeSantis, is endorsed by President Trump, but he's also an amazing dad. Ron loves playing with the kids.
Build the wall.
He reads stories.
Then Mr. Trump said, "You're fired." I love that part.
He's teaching Madison to talk.
Make America great again.
People say Ron's all Trump, but he is so much more.
Big league. So good.
I just thought you should know.
Ron DeSantis for governor.
Oh, it's an ad. It's a beauty.
Ad. It's different than many ads.
It's real. No, that's exactly right. It is real. I mean, it is different than any other ad we've seen, Serena.
Not anything like this before. And he represents actually my home district in Florida right now. And he came into the office, he's relatively young, and he's going for this governorship. The question's going to be if that ad, if backing Trump fully will work in Florida. The districts he represents have gone for Obama in the past.
Right.
And so it could easily be a rallying cry to those former Obama supporters to come out, or it could see this district completely flip because they've gone back and forth, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat. And so whether or not that'll actually work to his advantage is going to be a question mark when the general election does roll around.
Exactly. Is it risky to play that card in the primary to make it through the primary, but then you have to win statewide?
But also, I mean, as you rightly noted, I mean, he was down, 20-some-odd points in the polls, and it's just shot up since the Trump effect.
Right. It goes to show you that is still the way to win. Apparently, that's the calculation, that that's the way to win in a Republican primary. But I have to point out, though, on the Democratic side, because this race is just so interesting on both sides.
This is where you're going to geek out on us.
Well, not really. It's an amazing tweet. It's just as if that ad wasn't colorful enough. The leading Democrat in the race tweeted in response, Donald Trump, I know Ron DeSantis told you Tampa is close to St. Petersburg, but he didn't mean Putin's St. Pete. The congressman has spent so little time in our state, he might not know the difference. And it included that puppet. I mean, you could see that race just heating up and getting ugly on all fronts.
Well, and that's certainly a way to get under Donald Trump's skin. So we'll see if he engages more in this race clearly tonight. And Jordan Phelps, we know that in the last couple of days we've been hearing from sources that the president is itching to get on the campaign trail. He wants to increase his stops 6 to 7 times a week. I mean, it feels like we should get back on the plane and do this again like it's 2016 again.
No kidding, except now this time the plane is Air Force One. We know that the president thrives being out there on the campaign trail, and in large part he has proven that his role as president, or he believes his role as president, is really to be the communicator in chief. This is the party of Trump. Anyone running as a Republican better get in line with the Trump doctrine or pay the consequences. And it'll be interesting to see how that approach actually plays in the midterms. We obviously see DeSantis embracing it. We know the president, of course, had a victory in Florida. So we will see if the Trump magic holds in the midterms as it did in 2016.
Well, and he often referred to Florida as his second home since he's got multiple homes throughout the state, and he was always very fired up there on the campaign trail, so I'm sure we'll see a lot of that tonight. Jordan Phelps of the White House, thank you. Mary Alice, Serena, thank you. Make sure to download the ABC News app for all the latest throughout the day. We'll be tracking all the news at abcnews.com. I'm John Santucci in Washington. You're watching ABC News.